Checking Lab Man, respectmyregion.com. We're back on another episode of the King Solomon Nutrients podcast. Today I'm joined by my co-host Damian Solomon of King Solomon Nutrients. He is my go-to guy for all things nutrients, plant nutrition, general commercial agriculture. When I say general, I mean cannabis. We are also joined today by a couple wonderful individuals out of Avitas Global. Matthew Gates, Rob Smallman, and Xavier, who I don't know your last name because I didn't double check it on the email, but Xavier is here as well. I really appreciate you guys. Avitas Global, the team is going to be chatting with us today about European cannabis, the industry out there, the pharmaceutical nature of their medical cannabis. We'll call it foundation. The way it's just set up there is astronomically different than it is in Canada and also here in the States. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about some of those key things here today on the episode, folks. Xavier, Rob, Matthew, thank you guys for joining. How are you guys living today?
I'm good.
I love it. Thank you guys for joining. Damian, you as well. Good morning. How are you? You're coming out of the Ventura area. How are you living?
Yeah, we're home in Ventura this week, so trying to enjoy the sunshine.
I love it. Well, thank you guys, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Xavier, where are you at in the world? I think I saw you. Are you in Spain? Did I see that right?
I'm lucky to be in Spain today. Yeah, I'm just south of Barcelona. I've been out here for quite a bit, a little bit more than 20 years now.
That's incredible, man. And it's cool to have a different group of people on the show with us today. You know, a lot of my episodes, everyone, are typically here in the States or Canada over the last 4 years. And so to chat with somebody out in Europe, I've actually only spoken with somebody on one of my technology shows out of France, and it was not about cannabis. And so I'm finally excited to get a real passionate conversation. Now, before we dive in, Damian, can you go ahead and explain a little bit about what Avitas Global does, how you kind of work with them, and then let's go ahead and bring the guys in and let them share a little bit about what they do within the Avitas Global ecosystem. Damian, so what does King Solomon do, and how do you guys engage with Avitas Global? Why are we all on the show here today?
Yeah, I mean, I've known several of the guys for a few years now, just in with my work in Europe. Javier and I become good friends. Rob and I become good friends, and I've met Matt a couple of times, and I hope to be good friends with him as well. King Solomon Nutrients and Plant Geek Consulting help to support Avitas's global projects. And so what they do, and they'll get into it a little bit more, but they're the premier cannabis consultant, like EU GMP global medical cannabis consultant group in the world. Mm-hmm. So they're bringing together the best of practices to ensure that processors and producers are able to be successful while supplying clean, high-grade medical cannabis to patients globally.
So, and I'll go ahead and say this. I heard you say Javier, so I've been saying his name wrong the entire time. Javier, that's my bad. I'll show respect there and just own up to that mistake. So Javier, Rob, and Matthew, you guys are consultants out there in Europe. You guys are helping, I would imagine, just is it cultivation? Is it the build out? Is it just the nutrients? Is it the whole thing? Who can explain and break down some of those individual dynamics there for me?
I can explain it pretty easy. I'm the president of Avitas Global.
Perfect.
Also the vice president for Global Cannabis Exchange. We've kind of molded all into one kind of one-stop shop for any kind of licensed producer out there. So we offer the full consultancy packaging and not just seed to sale consulting. We also bring a network of buyers as well, buyers for GACP product, buyers for EU GMP product all over the globe, from the UK, Poland, Germany. We're working with suppliers also now out of Thailand, Colombia, all of these different things, and we're bringing it into one, helping companies around the world try to get to their product to the best levels to get it into an EU GMP buyer, distributor, pharmacy. It's a lot different from kind of the rec adult use market in Canada and the US. Everything has to go by European pharmacopoeia, and everyone around the world, Africa, Colombia, Thailand, they're all trying to get into German cannabis, into UK cannabis. All Portuguese cultivators trying to get into the German cannabis of the UK or Poland. And you have to hit these strict pharmacopoeia guidelines with your COAs, with your microbials, your pathogens, your heavy metals. And it's a tough go for a lot of companies right now. Over the wintertime, just the greenhouse production in Portugal, I believe 50% of the product is a non-compliant product because of these issues. So that's a big, huge hit for some of these companies. A lot of the companies that are even hybrid greenhouses indoors are having a lot of problems too. So we kind of come in and help them and facilitate the whole situation from seed to sale, and also for the buyers.
You're on mute, Joey.
We think about California, Massachusetts, Michigan, and how they've had extensive issues passing pesticides and all these different mold tests and microbial tests, and just those three markets specifically. Massachusetts, I believe, has the hardest testing requirements for those things. We're talking about a whole European standard, a whole set of rules and restrictions for them to follow. And at this point, the way that it's set up internationally is they have to abide by that European Union and those rules, and then they're able to import and export with other groups that do that as well. Correct? Pretty normal ecosystem. Just still, people are having troubles. It is that because of the style of growing? Is it an educational barrier? Help people understand what's going on. Where somewhere like a Portugal, where 50% of the stuff isn't necessarily controlled.
Again, it's a whole thing of factors. When I was the director of cultivation for Cureleaf out here in Portugal as well for 3 years, and I brought it from 55% compliant product up to 78% compliant product, and it was tough. It's old school plastic greenhouse. The farmers that are around you, you have no idea what they're using. Our IPM strategies are very, very hard, because we only have a few things we can use compared to the States. We can't use the regalia and all those different things that is a normal thing in America and Canada to use. We're very limited on what we can use for IPM. So it's very tough for the companies here that have no control out of what's going around them to make that issue for the COAs to make that compliant.
I was just talking with one of my lab sponsors the other day about how people love to say pesticide free, right? And how that's only for the pesticides they're testing for. But what about the ones that are not on the list, right? And how that can still be impacted from these other farms and crops. And it's interesting because you talk about Portugal, and then we've got Xavier over there in Spain. Talking about Germany. You said Australia, Africa. There's different agricultural scenarios going on in each of these places. So they're all gonna have their own shifting rules about what's allowed and what's not allowed. Correct?
But they're all trying to get into Germany, get into Europe, right? So they have to abide by the European pharmacopoeia. That's the tough one. So yeah, they're all growing from all over, from Thailand, Australia, Africa, but they're all trying to get their product to Europe. That's the thing. They all have to abide by the EU GMP kind of standards.
I know, Rob. So you're the president. Javier, Matthew, what are your guys' roles within this company? What are you guys?
Yeah,
what are you guys playing in first?
Hi, hi, nice to meet you guys, Joey, Damian. Thanks for having us aboard. So yeah, the way that Avitas was put together initially was a group of experts and advisory here in Europe, helping companies to reach their objectives and kind of improve operational efficiency, get better yields, start having less rejected batches, etc. And then we kind of realized that we're a group of individuals who are kind of well connected and we have a large path of experience behind us. So we decided to kind of put this thing together and help things move along individually and not having to do it for someone else. And we decided to reach out to a few other people. Damian was the first one. We'd already been working with him, using his nutrients and using his expertise also to help us. Yeah, it was really kind of natural growth from there. We really added one other person. In this case, it was Mr. Matthew Gates, who we have over here, expert in IPM and all things past pathogen prevention detection. So that really kind of enforces our scope of being a one-stop shop after our merger with the Global Cannabis Exchange. So yeah, it enables us to get access to all kinds of facilities, either startups or people who are, having operational, deficiencies, or people who are already excelling. But there's always some sort of value that we're able to add to them. This is one of the things that makes us completely valuable. And yeah, having people like experts like Damian and Matthew on the team just makes it a really obvious choice for a lot of these operators who are out here and need to, justify a really big budget or design of a facility. These standards are costing up operations upwards of $10-20 million per
Yep.
facility sometimes to really get everything off the ground, and to be able to differentiate themselves and keep the company afloat after the difficulties and complexities that they face. Sometimes it's a really long challenge. It's a long path. It could take years. Sometimes we're seeing operators 3, 4, 5 years until they're actually seeing, break even or reach the success that they want. And even then, they're still facing all of these rejected batches that Rob was saying is 10, 20, 30%. So yeah, that's the idea. It's not necessarily to always guarantee increases in yields or reaching KPIs, but what we most certainly want to do is help companies get their license, keep their license, stay compliant, and stop losing the rejected batches.
We've got the cannabis. What is it? The super league, the super team here, right? Like you guys are a bunch of cannabis superheroes, man. We've got Rob that has his own specialty. Matthew up there with his, Javi with yours. Like this is super cool, and Damian, right? The nutrition, like this is dope. You guys don't know that the reason why Damian and I have a relationship is I kept seeing him post on LinkedIn all this fire weed, and I was looking at who the weed was tied to, and my business partner had a convo, and we're like, "Yo, do you see that all of his clients grow phenomenal weed?" And we come from Seattle, and there's great weed in Washington. There's great weed up there too, and it's got a history of being clean. They care about sustainability. They care about good growing practices historically. Not everybody. And so we were like, okay, we got a good idea of what a good, an 8 or a 9 out of 10 really looks like. But seeing Damian and his, what he's been able to do with some of these groups, it was so apparent to us that like, wow, there's so much more to be learned and so much more to be desired and explored. And to hear you guys with all these unique backgrounds, I think it's super cool because you guys have probably seen so much weed all over the world in so many different types of conditions with so many different styles and processes. And so, Javier, one thing I didn't really hear you fully define is, but what would you say your expertise is here on the team? And then also, too, Rob, if you could elaborate before we switch up to Matthew. What is your true expertise on the squad? Like Damian's my nutrition guy.
Mine is in cultivation and cultivation advisory. I've been growing for 27 years, kind of all over the place, all different scopes, legacy. But over the last 12 years, focused on this side of the pond, things that have allowed me to grow in a calm and easy manner, I guess, non-legacy, if you want to put it. And then over the last 5 years,
a less
my
stressful environment.
well, it's certainly better when you're able to earn a paycheck and support the family without having to look over your shoulders. And that was working with the seed business that was legal over here for when I first arrived. But over the last 5 or 6 years, I've shifted to pharmaceutical advisory, and that's kind of a completely different scope. It's a different ballgame. What you see is a lot of these operators are hiring people who are agronomists and they have experience in raspberries and roses and zero in cannabis. And that's part of where the failure comes in. A lot of it is just people who don't have experience in doing it at scale.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is people don't have experience in managing microbiological loads or implications for pharmaceutical cannabis. So this is kind of like where we come in and just be a little bit of a different experience. But yeah,
there's growing cannabis in like a home. Then there's growing cannabis for sale. Then there's growing cannabis craft commercially. Then there's commercial. Then there's scaling commercial. And then there's massive pharmaceutical grade cannabis companies, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's about consistency, stability. I mean, Rob can tell us a little bit about more, but every single batch needs to be just like the last one. There can't be deviations. You have very strict internal quality control teams that are analyzing every batch to make sure that there's no foreign matter. This is why having people like Matthew is such a strong addition to our team. One of the strong challenges that we see is in these rejected batches is not just mold or botrytis or alternaria or any kind of these other pathogens, but it's sometimes also pests and sometimes it's the beneficials as well. These wind up in the flower because the resin is sticky and everything else. So all of these things can lead to failed and rejected batches, and a very robust and intelligent IPM program is the key to the foundation of every operation that we've seen so far.
Rob, as the president, what is your specialty in addition to running businesses? Because it obviously it takes a certain individual to kind of head up the situation.
Well, cannabis is a relationship business, right? So I want to keep all the clients, all the buyers, and all the distributors, the suppliers, in a good relationship because, back in the days, I used to be heavy into the legacy market as well back in Canada. Was approached during the legal time in Canada by Health Canada and kind of helped them pioneer their medical systems with the MMPR and all the AMPRs and everything they did in Canada for quite some time. And then I moved to Europe to do consulting. So I was a principal consultant before this, and Javi's pretty much my managing director and also principal consultant. Same with Damian. Matthew Gates is also the IPM expert in all this. So when we need help or we need something, we'll bring Matthew into that. But that's what we've been doing for the last, few years, 10, 15 years in Europe, is just helping everybody all over just try and get their standards to the right area. Like I said before, I worked for Cureleaf also for 3 years too. Consulting in Uruguay, consulting in Serbia. I did a project in Serbia, one of the first licenses. Yeah, so pretty interesting all over the world where, I was just in Thailand consulting there and looking at some facilities to bring some suppliers onto the global cannabis exchange. We're working with some of the government of Thailand right now to kind of bring our platform to show the traceability, to show that, what we do and how we vet the buyers, how we vet the suppliers to make sure that everyone's vetted on the platform and kind of organize that worldwide while we're also consulting with Avitas Global, to make sure all the product is perfect.
Matthew, what is that acronym? What does it stand for? What does it mean to you? Because as a professional, someone that's highly respected by your peers, somebody that's worked in these various projects, probably in multiple countries, I would assume as well. You've got to have a higher standard to adhere to all these different standards all at the same time in all these different projects. So what does the acronym mean? What does it mean to you?
Right. So IPM is integrated pest management. And to me, it's sort of taking a holistic approach, a system of systems approach to cultivation in general. I find that a lot of times, sort of surprisingly, it can be hard when you're dealing with so many other things as part of the cultivation process. You're doing your preparation work, figuring out how you're going to grow, your setup, indoor, greenhouse, outdoor, all these various contexts, different regions. All these things really matter. And we're also at a point in human history where the ability to get this information in some cases has been the easiest it's ever been. But on the other hand, you have to crunch this data in some sort of way, even if it's just by hand. And so a lot of people have experience. And like Javier said earlier, specifically, I mean, not just in Europe, but in the European context, I think there's a lot of, I would agree, seasoned growers, farmers, people who know what they're doing, but perhaps the plant is a little bit new, or we don't have some infrastructural support in various domains. Rob mentioned legalization for certain products you can use. I've said in presentations, there are certain products you can use in Europe, but not like biocontrols in North America, for example, and other countries and continents. This is also true.
Wow.
So knowing all the options that you have access to, what are the actual pests you're going to deal with? And then also you have to be hyper adaptive. Those pests that we deal with, many of which are shared with other crops that you're around, they get adaptations to chemical agents, but also biocontrol agents. That's something some people don't realize is actually possible. Some of their proteins and things they produce, like BT and budworms, huge problem in North America, and also in Europe and many other countries. So, to me, the importance is having all this information available and then being able to create the most advantages for yourself. No one wants to think about bugs or bad things happening, but they do happen. So you have to have an accurate sort of threat model.
Is it better? This is going to be a leading question. Better to be preventatively proactive or reactive because you think you got it?
So yeah, I mean, there's a context to that. The best you could do is actually be, if you had all the data that you could get for historical situations that you're in your particular context, the most efficient way could be sort of a hybrid of two. So sort of predictive. So for example,
a predictive, a little blend.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, proactive is usually almost always better than reactive, especially for the kind of damage you can get very, very quickly, very minimally to the bud structure or whatever. but if you can thread the needle, and some places can do this, if you know you're going to get certain bugs at a certain time or certain other things, and for whatever reason your other biosecurity just isn't going to get everything, then you might have it on a schedule, or you might try to apply certain things with that sort of timing. You also might decide to go with cultivars that grow a certain way, sort of offset this, or maybe grow at a certain time, so you can maybe avoid their peak activity outside, which whether you're growing outside or in a structure, they come from the outside. So that might also be part of your sort of doctrinal reasoning that you bring to bear.
Yeah, if I may, I have a fun little side note on just to touch upon Matthew's story in context to pharmaceutical cultivation in a project in Morocco I was involved with a few years ago, where they usually grow two types of genetics overall. Their toxinous local variety they call Beldia, which is an early flowering strain. It'll finish sometime around mid-July, late July, something like that. And then the traditional American, European genetics that grow there. As the farms start harvesting their crops and drying them for hash production, and to touch on Matthew's expertise here, there's an interesting insect population there, and the last ones to harvest usually face the highest insect pressure, because they need a resource, they need somewhere to go. So this was a really interesting observation to see how pest pressure gradually increased as the surrounding farms started harvesting one by one.
So the bugs go from different places and follow it?
Yeah, and then it's a race, right? Because the last one, it's like musical chairs, right? The last one gets fucked. Sorry for my language. And
it's real.
So
it's real.
Yeah. So these are flowers that are destined for the raw inputs of pharmaceutical APIs later on. So any kind of pest pressure that can be mitigated and avoided proactively instead of reactively is always a wiser approach.
Now, Damian, we're gonna need to
it's like
in
that
the combo a little bit as well here today.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Damian's up there looking like a Sith Lord in the dark, looking all.
There we go.
I gotta bring him in the conversation too, guys. We can't just have him sitting up there like a silhouette. So Damian, we're talking about this episode being European pharmaceutical cannabis. These guys have all shared their expertise. How does what you do with plant nutrition pair up with these gentlemen and what they do to ultimately create the one of those 75 to 80% products that gets passed through at that level? Because I know that there's got to be what people are feeding their plants can definitely have major impact on resin production for bugs or these the overall experience in these crops. And so how do you pair up with these gentlemen, and what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's whenever you look at these types of highly controlled systems, whether they're outdoors or indoors, it's all about being able to control the inputs, right? And so these inputs are all integrated. So when you look at what plants require to be able to produce, just to be able to grow, right, to be able to go through photosynthesis, it requires certain different inputs. So that's water, light, CO2, and nutrients. And so what the you don't want to limit any of those factors. And so by having a nutrition package or nutrient package that's going to optimize the plant nutrition, you're ensuring that all the other boxes are also ticked, right? You don't want to have a limiting factor. So ensuring that you're able to give the correct amount of food when the plant needs it is going to ensure its highest level of health. And when you look at being able to withstand pest and disease, oftentimes, and Matthew, please correct me, oftentimes the insects and the disease is going to target the most stressed plants first, right? They pick off the easy targets and establish and then expand from there. So by ensuring that you're able to always create a system where you're optimizing plant health, number one, and plant growth, then all those other things are going to also be more efficient. So utilizing proper nutrients is going to be very key in that whole integrated approach.
Now, obviously, we're talking about people, as you said, Rob, and you as Javier. these are $20 million facilities, 10, 20, 40 million. Like these are, it's an expensive thing to do, to grow high level pharmaceutical grade cannabis. It sounds like, right? It's not easy, and it's also quite costly, right? And so I would think that mitigating risk, decreasing the likelihood of certain things happening, has got to be quite important, right? Whether it's electricity and power, whether it's the nutrients and the things that Damian does there, and making sure that the right products go there, the right technology stack inside, and also too, I think what you said, it's integrated pest management. That's the word. Did I say
Yep.
that correct? And then that whole ecosystem. These are multiple things that have so many moving parts, all having to sync together. With Avitas Global, and this one goes to you, Rob, or potentially you, Javi. Um, how do you guys oversee and manage all these different moving parts? How do you track the data and take notes, and how does that all come together?
Well, we go in kind of like a facility audit. We go in and we evaluate what's going on. We evaluate the problems, and we kind of pinpoint what's going on. Like we're starting a new project in Spain coming up, and we're trying to start that project fresh and right, all the right parameters done, all the right things. Sometimes the greenhouse is tough, and clients think that they're going to, for European pharmacopoeia, you have to be between a 10% range on your cannabinoids, right? So if you set the registration at 20%, you know what I mean, THC, then you can only be hit up to 22 maximum or 18. And if you go in and you don't have that kind of structure properly done, so in the wintertime, some cultivars will hit like 14%, and then in the summertime, they're hitting 23%. But you have to be that super consistent. So you have to make sure all the parameters are perfect. What Damian's saying is exactly right. You can't just come in and think that, oh, we've got this lighting, these LED lights, and everything's going to be good. No, you have to tick all the boxes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So bringing in, King Solomon nutrients to it, bringing in Matthew Gates, bringing in all that, and trying to tick all those boxes is kind of what we have to do when we're going into a different kind of situation where we don't know what's going on. We have to do a full audit, kind of watch the process, and then evaluate it, and then come with our kind of knowledge. And knowledge only is experience and all the mistakes I've made. I'm not saying I'm the best grower around. I'm not saying Javi's the best, but we've made a lot of mistakes in the 25 years, 26 years we've been growing. And by those mistakes, I always say, you can never say you're the best grower. I'm like, and you can never say you're a master grower. You can say, the best growers, I think, is when there's a problem and they solve that problem fast. Those are your best growers. And you'll only find that grower and one of the times in one of the Cure Leaf greenhouses, I remember finance was in my ear the whole time. We had a bad root aphid problem, really, really bad problem. And the greenhouse was almost at a point where, it would probably be right off. And one greenhouse was close to 2,500 meters squared, which is 25,000 square feet of flowering, which is massive, right? So I had the finance constantly saying, oh, Rob, this is going to be an $800,000 loss. This is going to be an $800,000 loss. But we fixed it. My growers, me, we fixed it. We got it done. It wasn't that big of a loss, and we got through with it. But if you had no idea how to deal with that, it's a huge loss. And that's where we kind of come in to kind of help those companies in those kind of situations.
I think that's that right there, that statement, how quickly you can solve those problems ultimately says a lot, because problems will arise. This is agriculture, this is plants, this is living organisms, this is a combination of science, this is a combination of luck. And also, too, it's God's grace sometimes. You can't account for tornadoes and earthquakes. You can't always account for all these different variables that happen at any given moment, right? We're seeing more and more weather things here in America than we've ever seen. I don't really know what's going on in Europe, but it's gonna be safe to assume that things are happening everywhere, right? Hotter and more fires and all these different things. And so, I find what Rob was just saying there before we lost him, just to be so proud. Look for people that can solve problems, right? Pharmaceutical cannabis. Find people with experience that can solve problems quickly, that can identify things quickly. Matthew, I think what you were saying about the pest management, I was just reading something today. An American was complaining about our healthcare and so they're going to get dental work done in Mexico, which is, I guess, is a common thing, right? And they were saying that the healthcare situation here was recommending the wrong stuff to them. They were misdiagnosing multiple things so they could get more money. So I can only imagine how important it is to diagnose things properly and effectively, right, compared to something that, oh, this was going on, just do this, or people that spray things to solve problems, like it's not going to have a long-term impact, right? Javier, can you talk to me a little bit about when you guys are doing these audits, what when you walk in somewhere, what are you looking for? What's the Javi's POV like? What are some of those things that are important to you and that stand out to you that are immediate red flags? Oh, we got you
You're
on
on
mute.
mute.
There we go.
Sorry. It's odd that you put it that way because that's exactly what I look for, and that's exactly kind of what comes up is the red flags. Um, After so many years of cultivation and so many years of being in grow rooms or facilities one way or the other, and I know Damien will concur. It doesn't take long often to determine if the plant is happy or healthy or not, and then it doesn't take much long after that to try to get an idea of what possible symptoms or reasons are for kind of what that's happening. And then the idea is to be able to find which are the biggest choke points or the those bottlenecks for success, or for a company's bottom line in the end. So I mean that's kind of the main things that you're looking for is the things that are going to cause real problems down the line. Sometimes the company will ask you for the quick wins, the easy wins, but sometimes that's just putting a patch over a large wound, and sometimes you need to go a little bit deeper. And as advisors, that's kind of the challenge. Is dealing with the heads, and helping them to understand that the vision for remedying this ill path sometimes is a little bit more complex, and it'll involve a deeper strategy than just going in and throwing a few buckets of water on a fire. So I think that's the challenge that we face. And that's not just here in pharma, that's everywhere. But I think because crop loss is such an important reality, we're seeing operators here face because of microbiological load or other reasons, or for matter. Sometimes genetics are coming in here. You have growing in greenhouses that are untested, or pest pressure, or even the beneficials that are being found in the flower are causing rejected batches. I've seen that before. So yeah, it's a entirely different ball game, and I think that's we look for. We also look for processes and workflows, and for the staff, and seeing that their technique are correct, that they're repeatable, that they're trainable, that they're documented. Um, how robust the SOPs are in case anyone ever goes missing or is not able to perform their duties. The next person can come in and carry it on. So like
Oh, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here, folks. Just 1 minute. Let me see if I can do something. There we go. He's back.
yeah, is that better?
Yeah, it is. You were saying you were saying.
Yeah, so some of these implications for meeting the pharmaceutical standards are what make our challenge, our job a little bit of a challenge. So yeah, we need to go in there and make sure that workers are doing the right job, that the processes are correct. One of the biggest bottlenecks, for example, that we see here in Europe is the post-harvest process. A lot of these operators are focused on old or incorrect principles, and they validate methodologies that I think will enable them to have a stable product, but not necessarily focusing on the I guess the end user. I think there's an important reality that needs to be exposed here is that a lot of the current medical users that are joining the current landscape are actually kind of like the old type of California user going to the doctor and say, "Hey, my back hurts." So a lot of these pharmaceutical users are actually in smokers, or people who identify as smokers for a while. Some of them will have an idea of really what they want. Some markets are more mature than others. Like the UK is a lot more mature than Germany, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, the end user also has you want them to return. You want them to come back to the same pharmacist and buy that strain and repeat. So there's a little bit of everything that's involved in advice. We need to ensure that they're growing the right strains, they're growing them properly, that the strains are reacting adequately to their environment in the greenhouse or in the indoor rooms as they are. So yeah, there's a lot of implications to consider, and as we look for going through the site audit, Yeah, it's basically immediate red flags in the hardware, the infrastructure, the operational workflows, efficiency of the team, SOPs, and then just kind of like meeting with department heads and each kind of just getting a robust idea of what the company's past and future looks like, and then seeing where you can kind of go in. Then you go in, come back with our colleagues. We put together a strategy for success for them. And sometimes it's a short term, long term package. Sometimes it's an easy intervention. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex. But fortunately, as Rob mentioned before, we have a very extensive high value network and kind of all avenues here. And I think as a great grower, I think what makes you also is who you know and how much goodwill you have, I think, in the community and people who are willing to help you. So I think that's also one of the things that we've been focusing and excelling at over the years is making sure that, anything that we need at any given time lies at our fingertips through our people. If it's not through us or the science and the research that's already been laid down, exposed for us, it's the people who have been doing the hard work and we're standing on their shoulders. We have relationships with industry legends. I was a friend of David Watson, who just passed away, Sam Skunkman. We have friends with different leaders across the industry. So, we're collected and we're connected in many, many different ways I guess to the end user from beginning to end, from seed to sale. And I think, yeah, most certainly that's one of the things that sets us apart we try to focus on. But a little bit of a ramble on your first question, but yeah.
No, that I mean, no, it's important for everybody to get better clarity on what goes into this and what you guys are looking for, and the different processes and important points that that all go into a successful operation. There is a lot of layers that go into it. Going up next to Matthew. Matthew, what when you guys when I imagine when you get the call, there's already an identified problem, right? It's pretty much people think like 8 to 90% of the way, like, yo, we think this is what's going on. Can you help come in and get a better scope or give us better clarity or bring some more visibility to what's actually happening? What are at that point, like, it's going to be context based, right? Each situation is going to be different. But are you not? This question isn't about any specific situation. It's about patterns. Are you seeing different things in Europe and certain countries? Are you seeing different things and patterns in different continents? What have you been seeing from a consistency standpoint when it comes to types of problems or these various issues that arise in the IPM ecosystems?
To answer the first part of your question, typically it's kind of like two schools or two groups. You have people who, like you just said, some sort of emergency. They probably already have an idea of what the proximate problem is. We found this pest. We already know it's this bug. We tried XYZ, hasn't worked. Then you have to put on your sort of like forensics cap and kind of figure that, as I like to say a lot of times, something you thought was true is false, or something you thought was false is true. And you have to kind of dig down and find out what those things are. And like Javier had mentioned earlier, very, eloquently, you want to have like a resilient strategy. You want to have a robust reaction. So it's not enough to just destroy, the pest the one time, because you might get it again, or maybe it's still there. Or like with the root aphids, right? Very, very commonly, they're born pregnant, and in the right conditions, they can, double their population size, as much as 4 days, less than a week. So
Holy
some of
cow!
these things, yeah, right. So when you know this about their biology, or how many, it's not like the same as like knowing how many angels can balance on the head of a pin. It's how many spores can powdery mildew make, and how far do they go, and are you in that bioflow that passes through your country every year? That kind of stuff is actually more actionable than you think. And some of the patterns that I see, I had mentioned earlier, budworms are a big issue, especially in greenhouse and outdoor, not so much indoor, of course. But they can really wreck things if you don't have some sort of like infrastructure, like something that keeps the moth from laying its eggs on the plant or something like that. I think that hop latent viroid is a really common problem for a lot of people, and like Sun Tzu, famously said, you got to win the war first and then go to battle. But if you do the opposite, you go to battle and then you seek to win, you'll lose. Right? So you want to have not only a plan now, but you also want to have something that's flexible, but you also want to kind of, if it's possible, with all the resources that you have, kind of do things in that proactive or pre-preparatory stage to sort of eliminate it becoming a problem in the first place. So that would be like the ultimate thing. Obviously, things happen, problems occur, even if you have the best laid plans. But the more you can do that, the better. Obviously, so
it's a delicate balance of preventative, but also too like what Rob was saying, and there's only like, you always have these money people kind of over your head about balancing cost and what we really want to do, and then output and all these different things. And so I can imagine that sometimes that gets a little tricky, like trying to solve a problem with only one eye open and only one hand.
Yeah, and
yeah, you might have to spend 5 or 10% of whatever to get the rest of the 90 to 95%, and that's true in other other businesses as well, right? So it's not like an alien concept, but yeah, it's important to rectify.
Just to let you know, my IPM budget at one point was $300,000 for the year. So it's a big part of a business, and it's a integral part that you have to really control, because you can go bonkers on it, and then you can try to tie it down, and then when you tie it down too much, then big problems arise. So it's pretty crazy.
Precision growing is a word that I'm becoming more and more exposed to, and doing more research on. I feel like words like crop steering or precision growing, and here in the States, it's like the media has made it to make it seem like we're supposed to be afraid of it, but because people, and it's like they want to keep how our food made is secret or something. It's like, we got to figure out how to grow a lot of bell peppers for it to stay around 365 days a year. You know what I mean? At the local grocery store. Some of these other fruits and vegetables aren't even around all the time like that. We have to import and export things, and that seems to be a pretty normal thing. So that framework of importing and exporting, what is that like with you guys handling that in Europe, and helping bring this ecosystem of buyers and pharmacies from all across the world, these providers of cannabis, these manufacturers, these cultivators? What is that whole world like of getting weed across the world? It's crazy. It's like in some ways you guys are in the future compared to the States, right?
And just the frustrating part of it too is just even buying from Canada or buying from Colombia. The first deal, it's ridiculous. It takes 3 months to make one purchase on your first deal. And that all comes into the European Pharmacopoeia, the EU GMP, all the rules that Europe has. Well, we have to qualify the company. The buyer has to qualify the company first, then it has to do the whole qualification program. And then it can go through the process of the import-export permits. Some import permits take 3-4 weeks. Some export permits take 3-4 weeks, and then finally we can get into the packaging, and then we have to make sure the packaging has been qualified. There's been times where some product has been sent from Canada to Portugal, and it wasn't even labeled properly, it didn't have that final qualification that it was labeled properly. And when it arrived in Portugal, Inframed, which is our health authority, said, nope, we're not accepting this, and that's it, and you're not allowed to send it back. You have to destroy it. And I believe it was like 90 kilos destroyed because the Canadian company didn't do it and the buying company didn't do that final qualification process. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then once you get over that 3 months with a lot of Canadian, and I bet you if Americans try to get into the European market, they just go crazy to sell, 50 kilos takes 3 months, to get that over there. It's ridiculous. So that's what they have to worry about in the beginning. And then once you get that first transaction done, it goes like every, month or so with the import-export permits.
How does that even work with flour though? Or is flour not able to be import-exported? Because that's what you're telling me is that flour is going to show up at least 90 to 100 days old.
Yeah, so of course with the GMP, you got to have your stability studies and all of your shelf life studies, and you have to have at least 6 to 9 months, because some deals, like I just said, takes 3 months to just get there. But once that first one's done and the companies have been qualified, then it goes pretty much every month. You can do it. You could do a transaction, but it's tough, right? Because you have to meet that, and then it could be the COAs could be great in Canada, but then the sample or the product arrives in Europe and it gets tested again in Europe, and it doesn't meet the THC percentages, the microbial levels, the pathogens, and then what? Then you have to, either send it back or you get a refund or what, right? So everything has to be very monotonous and done. The sampling has to be done proper. It's a big ordeal to get it into Europe.
Damian, when it comes to your nutrients, I'm getting the feeling that the rules of the game are different everywhere else, but to play ball in Europe, you got to follow the rules of Europe, right? If you want to play in that realm, you got to follow these rules. Are all of your nutrients in that realm and all these things that you do, like there's not a difference between the stuff that's used in other countries? Like that's the same across the board for all of your products?
Yeah, so globally, I have two manufacturing sites. I have a site in the U.S. that handles product for North America, and we're starting to ship a little to Australia from the U.S. And then I also have a manufacturing capabilities in Spain for the European Union. So like you said, there are certain rules and regulations that require us to be able to move more freely with the product. So it was like I could import from the US into Europe. However, it's a really drawn out process. There's a lot of steps. And it was just easier for me to go and find manufacturing in Europe to be able to produce the product. And what I did was I ensured to ensure that everything was seamless and that the products were the same, is I required the manufacturers to source the same raw materials so that the recipes would be exactly the same no matter where you go in the world. And like you said, it's just being able to find ways that you can operate within certain regions within their guidelines and regulations in a way that it's going to be efficient and just more, just allows you to conduct business more freely that way, right?
Yeah, just to touch on that too. When I was with Cureleaf, I was begging for King Solomon nutrients. We were trying to get it, and Damian was going through those steps and trying to get it, European, approved, and it was just tough, and we couldn't get that deal done. But now we're going to get many deals done that he's now got the manufacturing here.
Yeah.
The quality of the cannabis, I would assume, has got to improve, right? We had Damian on with a couple other guests. I want to say last month or the month before, and they had a yield problem. He blew up their grow too much. They were growing too much weed. They had to refigure out all their SOPs and figure out how to reorganize their whole facility because they had so much weight now that they didn't have enough grow spaces and cure spaces and drying for the amount of weed that they grew. And to me, it was just like, well, that sounds to me like 20 to 40% increase there. That's crazy, man, to think about like that kind of impact within someone's facility. Guys, this is where we get towards the end of the episode. So I want to first take a moment to just say I really appreciate you guys. I need to shout out our sponsor, Damian, King Solomon Nutrients. Has been wonderful to pay for these series and to take care of this show and to provide a platform and a space for us to talk all things nutrients and to talk about ways to improve and scale and grow. It seems that we lost Javier, but we'll show love to Javier for him sharing all of his expertise on today's episode. Matthew, you as well, and of course you too, Rob. It's been a pleasure to chat. Now, before we get you out of here, I do want to give you guys the floor to chat or to share any info about anything that you guys would like. We could start with you, Matthew. Is there something that you'd like to share with the people or give some free game today while we got you?
Well, I make a lot of free content online on my Zentanol YouTube channel. Zentanol Consulting is my company, and you can check me out there for a lot of really good information. A lot of it now related to cannabis specifically. So if you're into that, if you want to be in the forefront of some of that information coming out, you can check me out there. And you can also, for professional inquiries, check me out at zentanol.com. And
How do you spell that?
I look forward to
How do you spell that?
Yeah, I know. Zenthanol, like methanol, but Zentanol. And you can check me out there, and I look forward to our mutual success, everyone.
You've got good series here already. Looking at the Zentanol, Zenthanol, guys. There's a lot of good things like what and why is a pest, the IPM series, powdery mildews, pest primers. Make sure you guys reach out, tap in if you guys got any questions. Am I seeing you also here on First Smoke of the Day?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's go. Sharing that expertise and getting to the masses. Hell yeah, I love that, dude. Thank you, Matthew, again for your time. All right, we got Javier back. Javi, you want to go ahead and share a little bit of the final word? Anything you want to share? Anything you want to get off your chest? Any free game? What you got for us before we get you out of here?
Nothing, man. I just want to spread the love, give all due respect and props to Damian and to you, Joey, for having us aboard. It's been a pleasure sharing kind of our journey over here, getting to the masses, and we look forward to being at everybody's disposal.
Really appreciate you again for your time, Javier. Thank you again. So different, these markets across the country, the different types of problems, the different challenges that exist, the different just moving, what the musical chairs of different variables and problems in that world. Rob, what would you like to leave the people with here today?
Just thank you again, Joey, for having me. Thanks, Damian, for inviting us. And it's good to be surrounded by legends at all time in the cannabis game, as these guys here. Just if anybody, any companies out there listening and need help, getting their product, getting buyers, getting, to the right levels to, get out there, look up avitasglobal.com, also Global Cannabis Exchange. We help in the global marketplace. We simplify supply chains, and we're just out there to help. I say help all the Davids trying to beat the Goliath, and all these big MSOs or these big corporate companies in Canada. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to ease it for everyone to get into the marketplace and find that ease of the system. So, yeah, thank you again, Joey, for having us.
No, it was a pleasure, man. And to think about it and to put it into perspective, right? Bringing a little bit of clarity to all of it. The future of cannabis is now. Anybody can start reaching out and working with you guys in terms of just being valuable and learning or helping to just start asking the right questions, starting to get connect with these operators, or maybe you're trying to launch a pharmacy in one of these areas, or maybe you're trying to start your own business, or take your brand from medical or rec in another country to something in Europe. Because there's opportunities here to build brands and to create partnerships and to solve these problems, and that's exciting. Now, Damian, you are my co-host. I appreciate you also for your time. What would you like to leave the people with as my plant nutrition expert?
Oh, I mean, yeah, just again, thanks for the time. Thanks to Avitas Global for sharing some of the insights into the differences in the European markets versus recreational markets, some of the challenges, some are common, some are uncommon challenges. And anybody who's listening and wants to be able to, start off on the right foot, if they have a global project coming up, reach out to Avitas. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Solomon King of Kings, as well as KS_crop_nutrition. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And you can find all of us on LinkedIn. We're always very active
Yes.
on LinkedIn. And I just look forward to continuing to smoke dank weed. I mean, that's the main goal for all of us, is to be able to help everybody smoke the best quality weed possible. And we're here to help you achieve that.
We are thankful for your guys' commitment to helping people grow the best possible cannabis, to helping to create better access of this dank fire quality cannabis. And to you, Matthew, for your science, and Javier and Rob for the science that you guys put into it. I, as a medical patient, card-holding patient here in California, having suffered kidney stones 15 plus times in my life and still being in debt from all of those emergency visit trips, I really appreciate it, because cannabis has helped save my life. And I know that there's people in Europe and across the world that are suffering and dealing with things just like me. And no matter what they're going through, I just appreciate the effort and the passion. And to you, Matthew, as a fellow creator, I appreciate that you're putting more content out there to get that out there too. I love to hear that. I love to see that. And we welcome all of that kind of stuff. Everybody, this was the second official episode of the King Solomon Nutrients podcast here on the Respect My Region Network. I'm Joey J. Ping. To my in the middle is Damian Solomon, King Solomon Nutrients. We've got Matthew Gates, Javier, and Rob over here from Avitas Global. Make sure you guys reach out, tap in. If you guys have any questions, I'll get you guys tapped in. Thank you again, everybody, and